This is the fourth time I've done this Majority World report, the first 3 times in Dublin, and the crowd just keeps getting bigger, but a lot of the issues, I think, still stay the same. What I'm going to talk about today is what does the world look like in this sort of age of entrepreneurship, post-Trump, post-Brexit, and really, with or without a Trump victory, I think the signs were really already on the table. So if we look at the big picture, we've really never been more networked and more connected in the world. There are 3.4 billion people now online. That number's almost going to double in the next 5 years. But with all of the networks that we have, we're actually often getting more divided. Those of you who sort of were really surprised with the Brexit vote, those of you who were really surprised with the Trump vote because your social streams were telling you what you already believed. We need to understand that while social media brings us together, it can also exacerbate our divisions. And moving forward, this was about 2 or 3 months ago, the architect of Brexit, Nigel Farage, at a Trump rally, and really the message of political nationalism that sells people independence but is really based on division is a sort of a physical version of this social media reality. And as a backdrop, the tech industry really is, on some level, reaching a golden age. We've got real visibility, finally, on amazing innovation in energy, in transportation. We have significant breakthroughs now happening in machine learning and artificial intelligence. We're really, if you like, ushering in a new age of humans and machines, and all of this has so many positive social and economic benefits. But against this backdrop, the majority of us, the majority world, are earning less than before while needing to spend more just to stand still. And the 1%, the minority world, has only become richer. And this is not a new phenomena. This has really been building for 15, 20 years. And in a way, it's now no surprise that across the world, ironically less so in the US and Britain, but across the world, people really feel strongly, unsurprisingly, about income inequality. And the 99% that Occupy Wall Street movement, which were precursors of all of this, really is sort of ushering in an age where, while we have technology progressing at a ridiculously fast rate, what is the role that technology plays within this new environment? Today, the 5 most valuable companies in the world are tech companies. This was not the case 5 years ago. It was not the case 15 years ago. And tech really has changed the face of global capitalism. Enormous value has been created. We know all of these companies, but many of them we didn't know 20, 30, 40 years ago. And actually nowadays, it's not just the Silicon Valley phenomena. I think, the Web Summit being in Lisbon shows once and for all, the internet is no longer a US phenomena. We really are seeing growth, not just in the companies being created outside of the US, but the impact that the internet is having on society. And right now, the internet is a sort of a fundamental part of global GDP. In the UK, 12% of GDP is made up by the internet. And what does this mean? What does technology actually mean for the big companies in the world? We've seen a political impact, we've seen an economic impact, but what is going to happen to the $40 trillion of value locked up in the Fortune 2000? 30 trillion of which is likely to be reallocated in the next 10 years. This is a really staggering chart that shows how quickly, particularly in the next 10 years, the makeup of the Fortune 500 will change. And if we think we've come a long way, the 3 trillion already disrupted in media, in entertainment, in retail, we've only really just begun. Tech's no longer just media and entertainment. It's property, it's food, it's energy. And all of the money that the big companies are investing in tech, 2 trillion a year, what's actually happening with this? Which part of that $40 trillion market will actually embrace technology to innovate and grow? And the reason why this matters is because big companies employ a lot of people, and there's no longer a public sector safety net. And unemployment, especially for millennials, is a really big issue still. I mean, these are some of the European countries who, by and large, still have over 20% unemployment rates for millennials. No wonder people are out on the street protesting. No wonder people feel that while luxuries like education and travel and healthcare may be close at hand, finding a job, finding a place to live is not so easy. And people are actually pretty negative, especially millennials and parents, about what the world ahead looks like. So are we really surprised at Brexit? Are we really surprised at Trump? And, we've seen really the reinvention and just the beginning, I think, of some of these labor markets. We've seen companies start flipping the idea of income and employment on its head. Unicorns like Uber, Deliveroo, Airbnb, Alibaba, while they employ a lot of people, they generate income for tens of thousands of drivers, of hosts, of sellers. And if you look at actually the jobs that people take within society, arguably Uber is just really the first wave of this change. We've seen the freelance economy grow meaningfully in the US and across many sectors in the last few years. And that sort of brings us back to something over the last few years I've been tracking, the rise of what I call the zebra economy. And zebras are just those normal equines. They're not the unicorns, they are just the horses that are in the millions, the tens of millions, the hundreds of millions. And if you look on Facebook, there are over 120 million zebras now interested in entrepreneurship, interested in independence, interested in control, interested in flexibility. And these zebras are using, sorry about the pixelation here, are using the new realities of self-employment to build an income for themselves and their families and start to build their own businesses. In fact, entrepreneurs already make up 5% of the world's population. How many entrepreneurs are there in this room? Can you put your hands up? Okay, well, at least over half of you. So we're 10x the world average. But even to think that there are 5% of the world already wants to be an entrepreneur, is an entrepreneur, thinks about taking their destiny into their own hands, I think is a really exciting phenomenon. And it's not just a Silicon Valley thing, it's a global thing. If you look at zebras by city, which we've been tracking for 3 or 4 years now, it's not San Francisco, it's not Tel Aviv, it's not Boston, it's not even London, it's Sao Paulo, it's Manila, it's Jakarta, it's Delhi, and there are people all around the world who have this mindset. And I guess the big question now for politicians is, with this backdrop of amazing opportunity on the one side, but increased inequality on the other side, how do you create an industrial strategy not for the many, well, for the many, not just for the few, which is really what we've seen, a resounding rejection of in the last 3 to 6 months. And Theresa May, whether she knows how to do it or not, I think has set out a strategy that says, it is no longer good enough to create economies that succeed for the minority. We have to create economies that succeed for the majority. And actually, it's not about jobs. If you look in the UK, we're actually in a relatively good place for unemployment. If you look at immigration, it's actually not about immigration in the UK. We have 9 million migrants already an active part of the labor force in the UK. And by the way, the majority of those migrants are not EU residents or from the EU, they're from the rest of the world. So the UK workforce is very, very mixed already, and it hasn't had a direct impact on unemployment. And actually, the UK government has doubled down and is the only country in the G8 with an entrepreneur's visa program, welcoming entrepreneurs to come and set up businesses in the UK. And the real question, I think, is how do governments take advantage of these profound changes and new realities? This was a list from 5 years ago, and other than Lionel Messi, the only thing that is still consistent between the tech realities of 2015 and 2016 are the fact that they are only accelerating, they're only getting more evolved, and even many of their marketplaces, messaging, AI, security, are actually just repeating themselves. So again, if you look at a local level, globally, you've got a $40 trillion opportunity just in the UK, and this is true in all developed economies around the world. You're going to see massive value displacement as big companies think about, how do I respond to technology? And this potentially, just in the UK, the FTSE 100 employ 5.8 million people, can and probably will have a real impact on employment. This is true in local economies. In the place where I live and work, Camden, we've got a population of 240,000 people, but the economy of Camden is larger than the economy of Estonia. And what is the local government in Camden going to do to sort of make sure that the 15 to 20% of households in Camden that are still under the poverty line, where they live next door to Google and DeepMind and Viacom, what is the opportunity in this market? And what I would say is that as entrepreneurs, and if over half of us are entrepreneurs, this is an amazing opportunity to do something important. I think since around 2012, we've moved, to a phase of the internet that is non-discretionary. If you like, we're living in Maslow's web. And if we started with things in the 90s that didn't really matter that much, the world would still go on without shopping, without media, without entertainment, without travel. But the world won't go on, society won't go on without energy, housing, education, food, finance, health, transport, security. And really, in the last 3 or 4 years, all of these opportunities in these industries have opened up to entrepreneurs. So I guess what I would say in this post-Brexit, post-Trump world to all of the entrepreneurs out there is, we're not afraid of the dark as entrepreneurs. But if you're going to pick a problem to solve, if you've heard anything from voters in the last 3 to 6 months, pick a problem that is worth solving and is big enough to not just have an economic impact, but to have a social impact as well. We're all living with new uncertainties. Whether Trump was elected or whether Trump was not elected, we were in a post-Brexit, post-Trump world. So what I'd say is what I would always say every year is, as entrepreneurs, we have no excuses. So go out there, build something great, and take advantage of the fact that actually, while things are uncertain, we have the opportunity to drive really positive change. And with that, I'll leave you with my kids in the sunshine and say thank you.